one that really gets me is, and it's a goes back to a Rumi quote, but he says, there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in. That for this, and even for the revelation, I think that's where true growth and transformation start, is realizing you're imperfect and we have problems, we have issues. And when you see that crack, like that's an opportunity for the spirit to come in and really bring self-awareness, but also transformation.
Every life has a soundtrack. Join me as we invite guests to share their journey through music, one song at a time. 10 moments, 10 memories. I'm your host, Sean, and welcome to 10 Tracks.
Are you ready?
Welcome to 10 Tracks. My guest today is transformation coach, author, award-winning cafe designer, ordained minister, Mr. Todd Joseph. Todd, thank you for coming and joining 10 Tracks. There's obviously a lot of that I'm going to ask you about, but tell us where you are in the world today.
I am in Santa Fe, New Mexico. Actually, I'm about 20 miles out of it in a little village called Cerrillos, which is an old historic adobe village. And I love it here. It's a
And
magical
that's
place.
home.
That is home, yes.
So I just introduced with a few things that you do or have done. Maybe I'm going to go backwards because ordained minister. Now, I did understand that you were a pastor of a church on the West Coast in, I think, the Bay Area.
Yeah, this is like 20 something years ago. It was a while back. Actually,
Were you ordained first and then a pastor, or how did it? Is that the same
it was
time?
kind of weird. Actually, I was self-taught theology, and I thought church sucked, so I made my own, and it went really well. It was like Black Warehouse rock bands, pour over coffee, and it was like Joe Strummer meets George Carlin teaching theology. So it was kind of a spectacle. But what was cool about it was about 1,500 people started showing up, which is unheard of, to go to church in the Bay Area, mostly hipsters and artists. And but then through that, I got actually multiple ordinations because yeah, it was fun. It was fun for a while, and yeah,
Are you
I'll leave
still
it at
using this
that.
today? Anything with your ordained?
Other than performing my friends' weddings, I don't do that very often. But what I have been doing is returning to a lot of the theology, because I think there's a beauty in the theology when you get away from the religiosity and you get away from all the there's a lot of division with how people view religion, which is sad. But if you get down to the beauty of some of these stories, they're just incredible. And what I'm learning in my right now being a coach is a lot of principles that we might use in helping transformation. There's like a spiritual um, version of the same thing, or spiritual application. And right now, I'm actually writing a book about putting all that together, so it's more seamless instead of divisive.
And you've already have another book out.
I'm doing one now called The Divine Equation. I had one way back when I was a pastor called The Relevant Church. I was a co-author on that,
Hmm.
and a bunch of small things. But this will be a nice big push that I'm trying to get out here shortly.
And uh, cafe designer. So tell us about this is in Santa Fe area, or was this on the Bay Area as well?
It started in the Bay Area. So I did my first coffee shop in Oakland, and I had no money. I was broke. So I had this old vintage Toyota Land Cruiser, which was my favorite thing ever. And so I sold that. So I had enough money to buy an espresso machine and some equipment. And I built a cart in front of the storefront, and I had no money to build out the storefront. So I wheeled a cart out, and I would sell, cappuccinos and espresso on the street in the hood in Oakland, which was crazy with ridiculously expensive equipment. And at about 1 o'clock, I'd wheel it back in. I'd take all my money and tips, and I would go to the salvage yards or this place called Urban Ore, which is amazing, and buy random things. And I would build it out at night, and that became this really groovy coffee shop. It was very popular. And then I closed it, and then moved back to Santa Fe, and basically built another coffee shop the same way, and on it went. But the last one I did was a restaurant called Puntia, and it was during COVID, and so nobody was working, so we had unlimited time to build something because usually you're in a hurry,
Hmm.
and like everything was on pause, including rent. The landlord was gracious, and so I spent that time with my business partner at that time, and we hand built the entire place. We won the American Institute of Architecture Design Award. We got put in Wall Street Journal and USA Today and Condé Nast Traveler. And the big one was Time Magazine's top 100 places on Earth was our
Wow.
cafe. And it was beautiful. Financially, didn't do so well. But
Is it still a restaurant or a cafe there now, or is it moved changed?
no, I closed it a couple years ago. It was just in this perpetual state of not making enough money for the time that it takes to run a restaurant.
Yeah.
It's a lot. So, and I wanted to realign myself with stuff that's more who I am. And that's where some of the um, being a minister in the past, but really just getting into coaching and figuring out how to really help people make shifts. And what I've been focusing on is helping people who have outgrown the dream of wherever they're at and help them elevate to their next mountaintop and become more aligned with who they are, more fulfilling. And I love that. I love that work.
And I'm sure we're gonna learn more about that through the tracks that you've selected today. And I'm really excited to go through these with you because there's quite a lot here and some great artists. And so it'd be nice to unpack this with you. Um, Now you call this an emotional arc,
Yes.
which I thought was very cool. It could be a band as well.
It could be a band.
And part one is the invitation and the ache. So
Yes.
we're going to be going on a journey here. So this is incredible, Todd. So thank you for that. Um, your first
Yeah.
track is "Come On Up to the House" by Tom Waits, which Tom Waits is incredible. I really there's a ton of his stuff that I have. I mean, he's got a ton of stuff. So you can be in different phases of Tom Waits and still not touch the surface because like his early work to some of his recent stuff, it's incredible. But tell us about that.
Yeah. I am a huge Tom Waits fan. And actually, when he was filming Buster Scrubs for Netflix, it was here in Santa Fe, and he came into the restaurant, and it's like, oh my gosh, it's Tom Waits, you know?
Yeah.
And so, like, all awkwardly is asking him about music. He's like, no, no more music. I'm not doing any more music, which is sad because he's just incredible songwriter. But when I was thinking of, you suggested these 10 songs. Originally, I wanted to do my 10 favorite songs, which would have probably been all Clash songs. But
Hmm.
I thought maybe something like this, or this emotional arc, is more of like a journey of life. And one of the reasons why I like this song so much is it's like it's so gritty, not just his voice, but what the song's actually about. It's like very human, it's very holy,
Yeah.
it's like inviting you into like real world and a sacred mess. And yet in that there's hope. Like there's this, you can return to the things of the spirit as messy as you are. And I think a lot of times when we start becoming aware of ourselves in our lives, we realize what kind of mess, at least for me, what kind of mess did I create for myself, and having to seek some sort of grace or some sort of hope to move forward. And so, very beautiful song though, and I love this song.
And the line, because I wasn't familiar with this album or this song, but the world is not my home. I'm just passing through. It's just such a great line.
Yeah. Absolutely. I absolutely love that. And I just think there's truth to that too. It's like it's coming through, and as messy as this can be, I'm going to a better place no matter what. And
Yeah.
that's beautiful and that's hopeful and honest.
I think I got introduced to Tom Waits through a Jim Jarmusch movie, where his a lot of the music is scored by Tom Waits, and so that's when I heard some of his songs. And then I think he might have been in the movie as well. I don't know if he had a part in there. Can't
Yeah,
remember.
I think he was in that movie.
It's like five different cities around the world at the same time or something, like LA,
Yeah.
New York, and then they were in Rome, and I think the actor is in the back seat of a taxi and he's confessing about shagging a sheep or something like that to a
Yeah.
priest. Or no, the taxi driver is the one confessing to a priest who's in the back seat of the car. It was excellent. The next
Definitely.
track is What Are They Doing in Heaven Today? The Be Good Tanyas. Now, I have not heard this. This is a new one for me, so thank you for introducing me to this. Um, but maybe you can give me some spiritual curiosity, is what you say.
Yeah, this is actually an old hymn that a lot of people have covered, including the Be Good Tanyas. And I like their version because it's it's instead of being like this hymn, a lot of hymns are very straightforward, like this is the truth. And that's why they had hymns was to sing the doctrine so it gets stuck in people's heads and they would remember it. Goes all the way back to the origin in the first century or Martin Luther during the Reformation. That's how they got the message was through songs. And so often when you have a hymn, it's just singing like theological truth. But why I like this one in particular is because it's not singing more of a truth, it's more of a curiosity. It's like what is going up there?
Yeah.
And it's and there's a curiosity, it's kind of haunting. It's they're singing about death and the afterlife, and there's a sadness in the song, but also there's this wonderment in the song. And for me, that when you're looking at life, there's moments where there's a struggle or there's a sadness or there's a grief, and you're yeah, instead of being fatalistic about it, there's more of an openness about it to enter in. This is like an aspect of humanity, an aspect of our personalities we can enter in. And the idea of this wonderment or this curiosity about what's going on the other side. And yet there's all this hope in there as well. And so it's a very
Yeah.
beautiful song. And yeah,
So, as a coach, do you feel spirituality is kind of has to be somewhere connected in there, or is that really kind of the base of what you're trying to do?
I think coaching in general, not always necessarily. Like if you're getting into business coaching and such, though I have some business coach friends who would disagree with me on that. But ultimately, I believe this is my belief is it's hard to separate ourselves spiritually, even if we're not being spiritual, we're still involved with there's other things at play. And there's energies or there's different ways to call God. You can say the universe, you can say the spirit, there's just a million terms, the
Mm.
infinite field. To me, it's all interchanged and it's all interlinked. And there's something else going on that in order for us to be the fullest expression of our humanity is to embrace our spirituality. And it doesn't necessarily mean a specific religion or something like that, but just the truth of something beyond us, something beautiful, something loving, something that's invested in our own transformation,
Yeah.
and to partner with that and to co-create your life with the spirit, I think is part of what brings fulfillment, transformation, and empowerment for us. I think it's extremely vital. So for me, for coaching, it's a big part of it.
Yeah. I think that spirituality, I guess, instead of religion, is a stronger because it's not trying to force you into some sort of group or gang or like where this is your jersey and you have to sort of like subscribe to this, whereas spirituality, it still has room flexibility and more to expand.
Yeah, I agree. And I also like if you looking at your spiritual whatever spirituality you're looking at, it comes down to God. And so the idea that God would only, I'm an ex-theologian too. So the only if God is only like this little group of people and everybody else is going to burn in hell, that doesn't really express the vastness and the beauty and the love of God and the Spirit.
Right.
And I think that this type of love and this type of existence and this type of personality is so vast and so beyond what we can imagine. And so to enter into spirituality becomes deeply rewarding, whereas religion can become very narrow. Though religion can do some very good, beautiful things, but ultimately, I just think, the expansiveness of God and the limitlessness of spirituality is, and that potentiality is where, if we're to reside in that, our lives just become a reflection of that, and we are able to be more than without.
Right. I think there's a lot if people follow a more spiritual path that they're going to stay kind of more expanded. Than
Yeah.
and the next track you have, I think this gentleman probably is he's on his own spiritual journey and has been probably from the beginning. I've never seen him live, but I'm a big fan. Um, and this track is Nobody's Baby Now from the Australian wonder, Mr. Nick Cave, who and I don't know how influenced you are by Nick Cave, but I mean he's got some amazing stuff.
Yeah, I'm a huge Nick Cave fan. Actually, I think someone asked me the other day what my favorite theologians were, and it was Tom Waits, Nick Cave, and Leonard Cohen.
Exactly. Yeah.
And and I did get to see Nick Cave live a few times. And I remember the first time I saw him live, it was I don't know how to describe it. Like this guy just walks out on stage, and he always dresses exactly the same
Yeah.
since way back in the punk rock days. And he has this energy, and immediately the entire crowd, the energy shifts. And it's almost like it's like a transcendental experience, right? It's incredible. So you're just brought into his world, and his world's wild because sometimes it's incredibly beautiful, and other times it's incredibly dark and like
Yeah.
horrible.
But I think there's
And
still some beauty in the darkness that he creates. It's
yeah,
definitely a sort of an image he's given you.
yeah, and the reason I picked this particular song is one, it does start out, he's searching theology, he's searching philosophy,
Yeah.
and he's grieving because his lover has died. And so he's got this um it's this deep love he had for this person who's gone, and he has to let his lover go. And at the same time, it's like he's trying to reconcile everything, but he does it in such a beautiful way where it's like when I get like I call it feeling the feels. So when I get in this thing where I just got to let all the angst out and the pain out, like I'll listen to this song because it just helps me process my grief, and
Yeah.
it turns it into beauty, and it turns it into something hopeful. And the song's just beautiful. It's just a beautiful song.
And I think sometimes there's these tragic songs, and even if you can't physically relate to whatever the author or the artist is trying to say in that song, there's sometimes this beauty of the song that is so compelling. So it doesn't mean you have to know like, oh, I've had this much grief in my life and I can relate to him 100%, but you can still relate to just the passion that he's putting into it. And I think, I mean, if anyone can write a whole album of murder ballads and make those things so, I mean, even I guess accessible because some of them were quite, you can play them on the radio possibly, or good radio stations. But just it's credible. The darkness that he creates is not kind of morbid. I find it's quite just it's got its own sort of space to be in.
Yeah, there's an aspect. It's just there's a beauty to the whole thing, and there's a peace to the whole thing. I don't know how to describe it, but they're very special, incredible writer, incredible singer.
And no surprise that he was obviously heavily influenced by Leonard Cohen as well. So
Yeah.
if he's they're part of your spiritual guides, I think that's they're in the same court. Um, Moving on to Leonard Cohen in part two, The Revelation and the Fire, which is
Yeah.
another great. Um, and again, so many questions. Uh, this is Leonard Cohen's 1992 album, Anthem, or the song is Anthem, but off the Future, which um, is possibly right after. I think it was the first album he's done since I'm Your Man, which I think is
Yeah.
probably one of his biggest. I actually first got into his older stuff, like his, So Long Marianne and Suzanne and all that kind of his acoustic, and then I started hearing his later stuff in the '90s. But this one's it's incredible because his voice is deeper and much more heavier and a bit kind of gravel. And then he's also got these more of a drum beats or drum machines mixed in there to some stuff, but it's still the coolest stuff. I mean, I don't know when he's never really put out a bad song. I think it's just
Yeah. No, he's incredible. So when I was younger, I loved like I used to call them the hippie songs, the Leonard Cohen songs, like
yeah,
Marianne and all that. And beautiful, just beautiful songwriter. And then Jeff Buckley, of course, did Hallelujah, which was just
yeah,
amazing. I think one of the best written songs ever. And I got reintroduced to Leonard Cohen, like this version of Leonard Cohen that you're talking about. It was when that movie Natural Born Killers came out. And
yes, waiting for the
yes,
miracle.
exactly. And these songs were in it, and I didn't because his voice had gotten so much deeper and the
Yeah,
style was different. I was like, I didn't real it took me a minute to realize it's Leonard Cohen. And I was like, man, these lyrics remind me of somebody. And then
yeah,
it's but yeah, but I chose this song, Anthem, a lot of reasons. And one is it's like there's so many lines in the song that are just incredible. And what I like about it, it's like this. It is an anthem, but it's like what you're standing for in life. And he's singing about, you know, like like war and peace, and it's just a business.
yeah,
He's singing about the hypocrisy of political leaders, you know, who are saying this one thing or fighting these wars, but saying prayers out loud is one of my favorite things. You know, the killers in high places say their prayers out loud.
yeah,
But the one that really gets me is, and it's a goes back to a Rumi quote, but he says, you know, there's a crack in everything, and that's how the light gets in.
yeah. That's excellent.
And that for this, and even for the revelation, I think that's where true growth and transformation start is realizing you're imperfect and we have problems, we have issues. And when you see that crack, like that's an opportunity for the spirit to come in and really bring self-awareness, but also transformation.
Mhm.
And it's an incredibly beautiful song. And so I love love. Like I said, he's like my other of my three favorite theologians. Definitely Leonard Cohen.
Yeah, and this I think this whole album has a lot of great songs on it, and just I remember when I think it was on one of his live albums later on he would do the future,
Yeah.
and then it just starts like I've seen the future and it's murder,
Yeah,
it's
you
just
know, right?
like it's like oh we're in for it now, but it's just he's
I
got
love that
such
song too.
incredible yeah.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting pick. And then in terms of like music to you, how important or how like where does music fit into your everyday life?
Yeah, it's essential. Like when I was young growing up, you know, at the time I grew up in the 80s, like music was your identity. So,
Mm,
you know, it was like, you know, if you're into punk and new wave and hip hop, it was all just coming out then. That was a certain type of person, you know, and if you're into, you know, Journey and Van Halen, which
yeah,
I also really like, but that's like another type of person, and that was your crowd, and it was your identity. And I realized back then that a lot of lyrics, especially when you got into the punk and the new wave and stuff, was speaking, it was like creating your identity or speaking to your identity. And then as I grew older, I started realizing that like I like all types of music, and I wanted to put so many other songs on this list just because I'm into all sorts of stuff. But um there's a it's almost transcendental. So I think it's one of the last things we have that still brings us into another place. And it doesn't really matter what style of music you like. For you, that's going to bring you into that place. And so if you're whatever you're listening to, it's just it brings you there, and it does something beyond just entertainment. And it's, yeah, very important. Very important.
Well, you've mentioned the next track. This is number five. This band a few times. You said you wanted to put a whole, all 10 were going to be just by The Clash, which is again one of my favorite bands as well. You've picked Clampdown. Um, you say you awaken to systems, injustice, conformity, rebellion, which is all I think growing up and learning and when punk kind of was in the late 70s really just kicked, took off. I think that also was stirring that rebellion.
Yeah, and I mean I love punk, like all of it. And like even like the Ramones are super poppy, but I love it. And because when you saw them, you're like, what is that? I never saw that before. And then of course the Sex Pistols and the Clash, and those are like the three,
Yeah.
archetypes of punk rock. And what I remember even back then, it was like for example, the Sex Pistols were this punk rock deconstructionist, but the Clash were reconstructionists. It's just like, well, how do we break these systems to have a better world? Like, how do we stand up for the oppressed? How do we have everybody be included? How do we call out the hypocrisy that we see or the complacency that we see? And like, I didn't even know what Clash song to pick. Like, I kept changing it, when I was
Yeah.
sending you this. But I settled on Clampdown because I also just think the song speaks directly to what's happening in the United States right now. It's like the system is corrupt and people are buying into this ideology and they're not thinking anymore. And there's oppression going on, and a lot of people are just either blind or indifferent to it. And but the system, it can't survive. It's not human. It has. And so if you're alive or you have a conscious, you got to stand up against it. You got to be true to yourself and true to not just to be in rebellion for yourself, but also for the sake of helping other people.
Yeah.
And yeah, so it's just a great song too.
I think, I mean, punk is obviously just another generation of songs of rebellion from the 50s and 60s, which you all you do have. I think that they just took it to a raw state. I think you can also hear that in some rap when rap was really kind
Yeah,
of coming into its thing, jazz. So there's ways that I think this type of, this stories that the way the punks in the early late 70s early 80s were doing, it wasn't about commercializing it or making money. It was really just coming from you know stuck in some garage or some, I've seen Henry Rollins at a VFW hall after Black Flag, and even Black Flag I saw, and I snuck in with a fake ID because I was way too young to see them in New Orleans. But we all used the same fake ID, and there's maybe about 40 of us in the, to see the set. And I'm like, how are these guys, living, earning a living? But at the same time, the music and the energy is just, but again, missing some of the ones at the right time when the Clash were really, um, I guess you're right. You could pick any Clash song because there's so many beautiful. And I think what I really liked about them is, you say the Ramones sounded a little bit more pop, but they were using that maybe 60s sound. The
yeah,
Clash had so many beautiful harmonies, but still their guitars were strong. The drums, the bass, that they had, and then you had like Joe Strum and Mick Jones just singing together, and it was just, I think that was kind of transcending in a way, that their sound, and they used a lot of reggae and
yeah,
music from Jamaica, and you find some of, even on this album they had a couple of songs that they covered, but then you hear it throughout their sound, stuff that they've taken and really put kind of that punk connection. And I think there is a connection between reggae music and punk. I think there's a lot of
yeah. There's definitely a lot, and they were both musical styles of rebellion, but also speaking out against social injustices and stuff. And like definitely the Clash, they loved. You could tell they just loved music, and so even when they started out, they could barely play instruments, and it's hilarious how untalented they were as far as musicians. And then when you get to like later albums, it was just like this is just incredible music. Like
Yeah.
they just learned, and I love that too. I love the evolution and the influences.
And I remember being young and getting a copy of that film they made. I guess it was in the early 80s or late 70s called Rude Boy. I don't know if you ever saw it.
Yeah.
And that
Yes.
was just, I would watch it like 15 times because you just listening and I'm trying to hear the dialect and what they're saying. And most of them, I think, had Cockney accents and London accents. But it was just, and then they kind of would put stuff that I had no clue that they were protesting or something to do with miners striking or whatever, in the UK. But I'm like, what's going on this? And then they're in the pub, then they're on stage, and then they're recording. It was all pretty cool just to, the whole magic of like the Clash. And they were in the area because they were very London group, their
Yeah, and
sound.
they were one thing I loved about them is they were playing in New York, and the promoter basically oversold the show. And so it was like I think like six times the amount of tickets the guy sold that could fit in the club, and then just told everybody else, too bad, you didn't get in. And so the Clash refused to leave, and they just sat and played until every ticket was played, and it kind of took this guy's club hostage until everybody got their tickets, you know.
Oh wow.
And then in doing so, they were in New York and they were wandering around and they saw hip hop for the first time. And they started hanging out with those guys and they saw street art for the first time. And then, like, on their next album, they did the Magnificent Seven song.
Yeah.
And I think that's the first time any white person ever rapped. And it was because they were hanging out in New York, with the other people doing all the work that they were doing in a different culture. But I love that they just took over the club, were playing all the tickets, and then they got influenced dramatically, which influenced music eventually. So very cool stuff.
Track 6. We go now into I guess a more this is the genre of where reggae meets punk, I would say,
Yeah.
ska. This, I think they're originally from Birmingham area or something like that in the Midlands of the UK. I was a big fan of Terry Hall after the Specials, but the Specials were obviously one of his first big bands that got him started. But the whole sound of the Specials is incredible. And you picked a Message for You, Rudy, which is obviously a huge song for them and probably most iconic in uh, probably most people would be familiar with that if they've heard anything from them.
Yeah. And again, I had a hard time picking what special song, or I was even thinking the English Beat, another
Mm.
just great ska band. And I got to ride Lambrettas with those guys, long story short, a long time ago. Really cool. For those of you who don't know what a Lambretta is, it's like a Vespa on crack. It's really cool. But
Lots of mirrors.
lots of mirrors, yeah. And what I like about a lot of like about the specials is that album, most of them were covers. So they were covers from Jamaica
Yeah.
that were already done in the reggae scene there. And I think Elvis Costello was the producer on that and just really brought it all together.
Hmm.
And they were able to just capture that moment, capture what was happening, the feeling and the rawness. And the reason I chose Message to Rudy is that it's another song of rebellion, but it's like as opposed to being rebellious for something like we were talking about with the Clash, this song is like a warning to people who are just being rebellious for the sake of being rebellious, and you're going to end up in jail. You're going to end up hurting
Right.
yourself. And it was like it's a contrast. There's a difference. And if you're going to use your rebellion, use it for something that matters, and
Right.
just don't be an idiot. And so but the song's very cool, but very, very
Yeah.
cool.
I mean, the sound. I actually met someone when I was living in the UK the first time in the 90s who actually, he played the trombone on most of the Specials records. And
Oh
he's
no
not,
way.
and Madness, if you remember Madness.
Yeah, I remember
Um,
Madness. Yeah.
So he, because a lot of them they couldn't really play, especially not the brass section and all that. But so they would be, but he had long hair, a beard, so he was nothing like a ska guy or anything like that. So what he would do, he was just a session musician coming in to play all the parts for the tracks on these albums, and then got paid, I guess, just for the studio time. And then they would get other people that would have to, they would teach the other people who were more in the band, that was the look, to be able to be on stage when they would play like on Top of the Pops, or they did live gigs and stuff like that and everything. And I was just like, and for me, I was like, you look, because he's a jazz, like almost Dixieland jazz stuff is what he does as his profession in playing trombone. So he definitely is not a ska or kind of punk geezer or anything like that. So it's pretty cool.
No, that's amazing. That's amazing.
Track seven. Now this is a huge artist, mega. But I think if you weren't influenced by him in some shape or form, then you maybe don't have a pulse, or you don't have ears, so you can't hear. Um, this is a cool choice that you picked, "Controversy" by Prince.
Yes. Yeah, I love Prince and I love the song. In fact, I grew up just outside of Minneapolis when Prince was in coming up and
Hmm.
then in his heyday. In fact, in the opening scene of Purple Rain, I'm in the crowd. So
Oh, really?
and we skipped school to go and because they were filming it. And yeah, the worst best movie of all time is Purple Rain.
Yeah.
So yeah, actually, there's this West African film called. They don't have a word for purple. So it's called like Rain the Color of Blue with a little red in it. And it's this West African version of Purple Rain. And the guy's in a purple burqa on his motorcycle, and it's amazing. Anyway, you gotta watch it. Um, but I remember there's a park in Minneapolis called Loring Park, and every Wednesday they would have mystery band. They show some dorky movie like, you know, uh, I don't know, like Buckaroo Banzai or something was popular back then. And then there would be a band playing, and it could be the Replacements or it could be all these really cool
The
Minneapolis
replacements.
bands.
Yeah.
And I remember Prince comes out, and and you heard him on the radio sometimes, but you just thought he was local, but you didn't understand he's Prince. And I remember they come out, he's wearing trench coats with G-strings and platform boots, and Wendy and Lisa, the keyboard players, they're in lingerie. And this thing's going on, and you don't know what's going on because you're in Minneapolis and this is the Midwest, right? And these crazy hairdos.
Yeah.
It was just like, at first it was uncomfortable, but now you're like, this might be the coolest thing I've ever seen in my entire life. And I just
What year
absolutely love
was that?
Oh, this is like 81 or 82, something like
Okay, so
that.
he was still quite.
Yeah, it was right before he broke. I think this was the album that really broke him, and then he went huge after that.
Yeah.
Um, but the reason I chose this song in particular is because one thing, there's a theme in a lot of Prince's stuff, and there's this questioning of God all the time, and it comes
Yeah.
up over and over and over again in his music. And I like this song in particular because he's questioning who he is, like his own identity,
Hmm.
and who he is already controversial, and everybody's already writing, they try to figure him out,
Right.
and they can't. And then he's trying to figure out who he is, but he's also who am I in light of God, and who is God to me? And even at the end of the song, he's doing, the Lord's Prayer.
Yeah, exactly. I remember hearing
And
that.
it's super groovy the way he does it, but it's like this, like it's almost like he's like I am who I am, and I am okay, and I'm okay in sight of God, even though a lot of people are going to disagree with that. I feel that way. It's kind of what he's saying,
Yeah.
and I like it. It's like a discovery song with a power song, and it's really groovy.
Do you think that that's sort of one of our, I guess, faults, that people they try to, not just people like Prince, but everybody, when you meet somebody new, you're trying to figure out who they are and fit them into something it's in you, you might have this category or this somewhere that you have to put them and say, okay, oh, that person's like that. Okay, they're this. And so when you meet somebody like Prince, it's hard to just, okay, oh, they go there.
Yeah, exactly. And And what I like about it, like he's you can't define him, and he's also like the questions he's presenting in the spiritual sense, they're dangerous spiritual questions. Like you don't dare ask those questions, and of
Yeah.
course he does, which makes it compelling. And but I think that's if like I think that applies to all of us. There's an application for us where if we can be honest with who we are and not hide behind something and just be truly, fully who we are, we do become undefinable. But
Right.
that's where the power is. That's where our strength is. And it might make other people uncomfortable, but that's okay. Then maybe they need to be made uncomfortable.
Right. Exactly. It's
And
just,
there's a yeah,
no.
there's an energy about that. Actually, I used to work at a club in Minneapolis, and that Prince was involved with. And one day, and you never see him, because he's Prince, and you're just working. We're DJs. We're in one day. We're got some new records or something. We're messing around, and I'm with this other DJ, and the club's not open. It's like in the middle of the day, and my friend goes, "He's here," and I go, "Who?" He goes, "Prince. He's here." I go, "How do you know?" He goes, "Can't you feel it? Can you feel it?" And then I
Wow,
go,
that's cool.
"Yeah," and I stop and I go, I feel something. And then the door opens up and he comes up this entourage that walks through. And we're like, it's Prince.
Yeah.
But this energy preceded him, which taught me many lessons on many levels, about our own energy. And he had it, but incredible.
I did actually see Prince live in New Orleans during Purple Rain. And but it
Oh,
was huge. It was in the Superdome. So it was just mega. And I was like way in the back. And so, you know, and that was like the early before, the stadium bands would have screens galore. So you could, no matter where you're standing, you're going to see. But you could still feel the energy of the people in there. And especially when he did Purple Rain and all that, it was just like, I think you could still bring lighters to concerts back
yeah.
then and stuff like that. And
And
do
now we do
stuff
cell
do
phones.
stuff with the lighters.
Yeah.
um, Now we're moving on to part three, the becoming and the return.
Yes.
Tell me what does that mean?
It means like as we're going through the emotional arc, like in the beginning, it's the invitation and the ache. So you're like trying to figure things out. You're trying to figure who you are.
Yeah,
But then you get to the stage, which was part two, the revelation of fire. It's like, no, this is who I am and this is what I stand for.
right.
And I'm going to be who I am. And then you get to the third part, the becoming or the return is you understand who you are, but then there needs to be this almost like dismissing of the ego and allowing the true essence of who you are. So you're the fullness of who you are, but part of that is actually returning to some things you might have either pushed away or forgotten about yourself or forgotten about humanity.
Hmm.
And so it's almost like a full circle, and it's coming into a more mature version of yourself.
Yeah. And track eight is New Order, Age of Consent, which is, I guess, perfect title, a perfect song to pick for this becoming and the return. Tell me about this and what does New Order mean to you?
I love New Order, and before they were Joy Division, I loved Joy Division. And after Ian had died, like they thought it was over, and there's no way a band could just reinvent themselves and become one of the most influential bands in music, which they did.
Yeah.
And actually, I got this true story. I got this album was given to me by my best friend growing up. I think we're 14 years old or something, 15. And he gives me this album. I still have it on vinyl.
Mhm.
And this particular song, it always reminds me of um, like a becoming, like an initiation into something new. You're leaving something behind, and the song is leaving a relationship, but it's also about becoming who you actually are.
Yeah.
And so every time, I don't know why I've done this, but like when I would open my, um, actually when I had my church, I always had a record player. I played on vinyl in the church for me. But when I opened my first coffee shop in Oakland, I put it on the turntable. And my friend who gave me this album when we were kids had surprised me and flew in from New York City. And he walked into the room right when I was playing the song. And he's like, "Is that the album I gave you when we were kids?" It's like, yeah, what are you doing here? And but I do that every time I do a new endeavor. I want to start something new. I actually play this particular song. One because I just love it, and they were creating sounds too that no one had done yet. So they were bringing in the synthesizers and the sampling, and they really developed it. But even on this song, it was just a little. I think it was a Moog and a Roland. I forget the name of the Roland, something 101. But it was they were just these basic keyboard patches adding to like a punk style music, but having like a little groove to it. And all basically started the DJ club phenomena came eventually from these guys, actually from this song. But I absolutely, yeah, I love New Order. And again, I like this song in particular because in our journey that we're going through, it's you're coming into your own and you're being yourself, your authentic self. And I love that. I just love it.
And it's got an energy to it. So, I mean, I think this album I remember listening to when and around the same time that I'd gotten into Joy Division, I got into New Order as well. And I was a huge Echo and the Bunnymen fan, and then I actually I've seen New Order a couple of times live, and they were great. But like this album in particular, it's like power, corruption, and lies. So you think about the title, and you're like, holy, it's like this is throwing a lot at you. It's like, where do I gotta this is putting a lot of pressure on me if I, when I buy this record and this is gonna be. And then you hear some dance music in it. It's got, I think they're one of their biggest ever. It's like Anthem was off this album, especially on
Yeah.
I think it's on the vinyl version, but it's definitely on the CD version and whatnot. It's
Yeah.
um, and then one of my favorite tracks is the last one, Leave Me Alone. It's
Yeah.
just like, it's kind of that, but you can hear Peter Hook's bass. It's so strong, and it's like, it almost sounds like the guitar. And then like Bernie's guitar playing is just incredible. And I remember reading an interview with Johnny Marr, and we were talking about electronic. If you remember, they did like a little offshoot
Yeah.
thing together, and he was saying that Bernard Summers is one of the best guitar players, but he just doesn't want to practice. He's like, he's good, he's incredible, but he should practice more because he's like, just his sound is his, and the way that his guitar chords that he picks for the songs, it's just like incredible.
Yeah. And it's super unique. Like it had like they'd be like two notes in, you knew exactly this was New Order, especially from
Yeah.
this time era. And for me too, it creates a certain emotion and it's part nostalgic and it's also part expansive.
Yeah.
So I love that song.
Now you on track 9, um, this tends to be a little bit softer. I never heard of this guy Kevin Morby. Um, Beautiful Strangers is the title. But it actually has such a great sound. His voice it's hard to like, again, I was trying to put him somewhere like, who are you? Are you on the Leonard Cohen side? Am I going to put you over here next to this artist? But it's hard to pinpoint how his sound, but his voice sounds really it's gentle, but at the same time, it's quite strong.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Kevin Morby. I've gotten to see him live, and what I liked when I saw him live was he did all his songs and the ones, he has a lot of hits, but he instead of being the version you'd expect to hear in a concert, it was all completely different arrangements. So it was like a brand new experience to the song.
Mhm.
And extremely talented and pulling it off and where the audience instead of being no, I want to hear it the way I heard it on the album, it's like you've elevated it. And
Yeah,
I like
exactly.
that.
I actually love that when you hear an artist and they take some of their own art and give you a different version of that live. It makes
Yeah,
it more special. The sound is it feels like you're getting a special gift from them during that concert or that event. Um, I've
exactly.
found some information on him, and it says he was heavily influenced by an artist named Simon Joyner. Do you know who he is?
No, I'm gonna look that up though.
Okay, he has a song called "One for the Catholic Girls," which that intrigued me just
Yeah,
because. But then I found out you probably remember John Peel. You've heard of
yeah,
John Peel, yeah, the late John Peel.
yeah.
Um, And so there's something famous that John Peel did on one of his radio shows on BBC. He basically played the whole album of this guy from start to finish, which is not normally what he does. But I mean, John Peel was like notorious for loving the band The Fall. You remember The Fall, Marky Smith?
Remember the fall?
And they're
Yes.
very hard, I'm a big fan, but they were not that accessible. They were definitely a harder, pill to swallow. So this album, he played the thing. It's called The Cowardly Traveler Pays His Toll, which is a cool title as well. So it's like I don't know how this, but I can see how this guy, Kevin Morby, is influenced by this, and I think he Bob Dylan and a few other, more
Yeah. No,
iconic.
he's a great songwriter, and a great composer. And I picked the song for a lot of reasons. One is it's a really beautiful song.
Hmm.
It is. It's just absolutely beautiful. It's healing. It's like a healing song. And part of it is like it's a bit of a protest song too, because it speaks to again some issues in the United States where we have gun violence, we have racism, we have systemic, um, actually just violence against Black people, and
Yeah,
and where the police sometimes or have done um, committed crimes, trying to say they're doing their job. And in fact, they've killed people that shouldn't have been killed.
yeah,
And so this song is like kind of a protest to that. And so he's singing about some specific situations that had happened and to remember these people, they're beautiful people, and
hmm,
think of them as a person. Like they're not as a race or statistic. These are people. And part of the song's also about how we stand up for each other in a community and we got each other's back. Part of the song's grieving. And a big part of the song too is just ultimately is do we have love for one another? We're supposed to love one another. And so um it's like it's a very graceful song, right? It's
yeah,
about seeing others, but also allowing yourself to be seen. It's about opening, it's about softening, and it's a very gracious song, and it encourages you to embody love.
yeah.
And yeah, so it's a very
I
beautiful song.
I think that is a special to describe it. It's also to me what I really liked about it, and it's again a new find. So thank you for sharing that with me. Um, it also brings because I think the protest song. It's not one. There's not only one way to do it. There's not one sound. It's not one this words or that words. I think protest songs. You can be anything, and they can come from any type of sound, from different voices, from different instruments. I'm sure there's tons of jazz songs that have, protests in it, and I think this is another part of the beauty of that is just coming from your heart. It's even stupid to call it a protest song or to put that
Yeah,
label on it because it shouldn't be. It should be just a human song. Like that's
yeah,
how the feelings that people should be able to. And I think even in classical times there was compositions that was opposing certain governments or something like that. And they wrote that in that. Same with art. Picasso's, one of his most famous pieces is because of Franco. So I think you
right,
can look at all of this, and it doesn't have to be one. There's not one cut to this.
right, exactly. And again, it is beautiful. And I also think as part of in the arc that we're going on here, it's like I think you come to the fullness of the human experience when you can see the beauty in everybody,
Yeah,
regardless, and allow that, and then actually show not just seeing the beauty, but show up with love for everyone.
yeah.
And I think that's the height of our existence.
When we get to track 10, again, this was incredible. I remember playing it for a friend in the car as we were coming to the airport yesterday, because I was traveling, and I played him a bit of it just to see. This is a work colleague, and he just like looked at me kind of like, and he's big into classical and other forms. So like he's listening to the composition more so than the voices, but still everything he was just like, okay. And he's trying to figure out what instruments they're playing and everything. And so this is a Ukrainian band, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Daka
Dr.
Braka.
Raka.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And now the
I
English translation to the title of the song is Yankee.
Yeah, loose translation.
Okay. And they're a Ukrainian quartet. If I'm three women and one guy in the group.
Yeah. And they started as an art project, I guess.
Okay.
Like, I guess they've been around for like 20 years. And I am so into this band. I am mesmerized by them. And again, they are a also very political protest
Hmm.
culture, stand up for right. Everything we've been talking about,
Yeah.
they do that. And this is Ukrainian band. And my first experience with them was when my restaurant in Santa Fe, and had a coffee shop, and we have this area where we have free music all summer long. And the coffee shop was used as a green room for whoever's playing that night, and the restaurant would bring the food over. So I was bringing the food over, and I wasn't really paying attention to who's playing, and I never heard of them. So I'm like, I haven't heard them. I'm not going to go see them, right? And I remember walking back after dropping the food off, and they started playing, and it was this song. And
Hmm.
I'm hearing like these tribal drums. And I'm like, what is that? And all of a sudden the vocals come out. And then I turn around and I see these costumes that they're wearing, which are these traditional dervish Ukrainian
Hmm.
costumes with the giant like hats that make you look like Marge Simpson and
Yeah, yeah.
uh, the robes and like, the lead singer looks like Rasputin. And
Like something
um,
Orthodox or something.
yeah, exactly. And I'm just like mesmerized. And then it's these three girls on these drums and then their vocals, and it was so powerful that it was chilling. Like I just stopped and I didn't even go back to my restaurant. I just watched these guys and then just did a deep dive and found everything that they ever did and fell deeply in love with them. And I got to meet them last year because we had a music festival here at Ghost Ranch, which is Georgia Keefe's ranch, and they were thinking of who to come, and I kept bugging the promoters that they have to get this band, and they did. And the same thing when they're there, the crowd they just really stopped and just fell in love with them because they're just really compelling.
Yeah.
But why I picked this song, and even them in particular, is one is my in the U.S. we're all you know made up of different ethnicities. We're all mutts. And one of my ethnicities is Slavic culture, and so I'm really drawn to anything Slavic.
Hmm.
Polish, Ukrainian, and all that stuff is where I come from, and so it's like a return to that, right? It's like this ancestral return to like, and their songs are about the nature and they're about the earth and about the deeper mystery of things that sometimes gets lost in the modern world.
Yeah.
And they sing about that, but they're singing about it in a modern context, using traditional instruments, but with modern rhythms and stuff like that. Mixing R&B and punk and all this stuff. Yet it's cellos and drums, and it was yeah, I really like this band a lot, and I get actually emotionally moved by them. But I think this is like a return, like on the arc. We're returning to what's sacred. We're returning to the mystery. We're returning to our ancestors, right? And um, it's like a closing, but also more like this quiet prayer to the fullness of who I am is also everything that came before me. I'm just part of
Yeah.
this huge cycle. And so I like these guys a lot. Love this song.
Now, reflecting on all 10 of your tracks, I'm just looking back in some of these. There's definitely an over theme of protest, but there's I, th I think compassion. I would say there's a lot of love through the different artists and the words that they're saying in these songs that you picked. I think, but do you feel like a lot of what's going on in the world today is also maybe what kind of has influenced your choices in these, or do you think that maybe the tracks in particular, but not the artists as such?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that twofold. One, yes, I think the way the world is right now, and us being alive, witnessing it, and if we're awake, you see, you see some of the insanity, and you see the pain, and you see
Mm,
uh, just the institutions that are supposed to be safe crumbling and witnessing it and wanting to speak to it as opposed to just pretend it's not happening,
Yeah.
you know. And at the same time, too, with these songs, like I think all these songs speak to that, but they also speak like they're personal for me because it's like these are the ideas behind these songs is kind of the story of my own becoming
Y-
who I am.
your blueprint.
Yeah, it's like it really is. And so they each are a reflection of like who I actually am. And I feel that in this day and age, or me as a person, it's in order to show up and be fully alive and have any type of impact in the world, it's going to come from protest. It's going to come from self-discovery. It's going to come from identifying your own cracks and your own flaws. It's going to come through the work and transformation you have to do on oneself
Yeah.
and to evolve. And the goals you want to do this with grace and with love and with compassion. And then as you're compassionate and loving for yourself, you're going to take that love and allow that to flow to others. And ultimately, as a spiritual experience, because all these songs are spiritually based, it's allowing the spirit or allowing God or allowing the universe and that love and that compassion to flow through you
Yeah.
to others so others can have their own becoming. And I think the solution, if I doesn't have a solution for everything, a life and the world we live in, it's just comes down to letting love triumph, letting grace triumph, letting inclusion triumph, and speaking up against uh, what's a barrier to that.
Yeah. I think when you were saying that this a lot of now and seeing all these, I guess you can say, like Leonard Cohen says, the with the crack. Um, for me, I was telling a friend the other day, it almost is like when I believed in the tooth fairy and then realized where the tooth fairy is coming from. It's like this now, it's this scam. And now I think as I'm older and I realize the scam, maybe not in the tooth fairy, but just in politics and in just governments and the way that they, the geopolitics of manipulation. It definitely, and I think that's brought me back to my punk roots as well. It's kind of this full three, where it's not that I got softer and fatter and tired. I think it took, like, when you see, I think it makes you, if you're not human and you don't feel what's going on in the world, I think it's then you're not alive, or you're just numb,
Yeah.
and and you shouldn't be alive. But I think it does bring you back to, and I've kind of noticed on some of my Spotify playlists that I've titled, what, like, different names that have more around revolution and this and that and stuff that maybe in the past I would be a lot more, just inside thoughts rather than outward emotion. So it definitely has provoked a lot. But I think you've um, collected quite a lot of different artists and different sounds and different uh, lyrics here that are incredible and amazing. So your choices are um, beautiful, but I think you said it is also about love. And I think I'd say all of these artists here, they they create from love, from them, from their heart, which is where it has to be.
Yeah, and also I think that's why, for me, why these songs resonate so much because I feel it. It's something. It's a transmission more than it is just sounds. There's a spirit in there
Yeah.
swirling.
Todd, thank you so much for being a guest on here and sharing your 10 tracks. It's worth us to, I feel like I could do 10 tracks on specific, if we do genres or maybe words, and you could pick 10 tracks on that one word. But for sharing this mix with us, I really appreciate it.
Oh, thanks. Well, it's a super, super honor to do it and to be here and really fun. And it's good to hang out.
Yeah, for sure. Um, well, I tell everybody, so far, this is how I feel. It's like always to be kind, be humble, and be loved.
Yeah.
So send that to you as well, Todd.
Thank you. I receive. Thank you.
Thank you.
Pretty vacant.